I was asked to talk about the future of aging in Vermont, and I don't want you to think this is a bait and switch of any sort, but I'm going to reframe the issue and reframe the question just a little. The question isn't really complicated. The question to me is, how do we sustain the kindness? It's the answer, of course, that's more challenging. It's been said that kindness is the language that the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Kindness is the nurse's aide who lifts nearly a ton a day, and yet at the end of her shift, answers the last call light with a smile. Kindness is a home health aide who drives the snow-covered back roads, worried about whether her kids got off the bus safely and everybody's okay at home, and yet she shows up at the end of the day to change a catheter with all the tenderness and kindness that's needed. Kindness is a AAA case manager who day after day, week after week, explains many of the mind-numbing alphabet soup nuances of Medicare, parts A, B, C, D, Quimby, Slurdy, and more. Slurdy, I'm not sure that's what. All of that and more to a senior citizen who's so anxious and so worried whether they'll become a pauper because of the cost. Kindness is answering the door to a smile and a home-delivered meal. To me, serving others in need, as you do, is perhaps the highest calling there is. We know that we face a demographic tsunami, if you will, of older Vermonters. Our state is aging more rapidly than any other state in the nation. We know with that comes many needs and challenges. It has been said that we are all tabs, temporarily able-bodied. This state of wellness we enjoy, some more so than others, is not a permanent condition. Our time will come, for some, sooner than others. Who will be there in our time of need? Friends, family, neighbors, strangers, government? Who will answer the call when we struggle to feed ourselves, to bathe ourselves, to toilet ourselves, to move from bed to chair, to dress ourselves? Who will be there in our time of need? As more and more Vermonters age and come with growing needs, we have to ask ourselves if we have the ways and means to meet the challenge. More resources will be needed in quantities perhaps none of us might have ever imagined. Divorce rates in Vermont have nearly doubled over the last 25 years. Translation, more and more Vermonters will be alone without a partner to help them as they age. We have to wonder, given the needs, whether the resources will be there, whether what I call the social convoy will be there to help all. Surely it will be strained and not able to help everyone. The social convoy did not stop at Aldous Lackey's house on a beautiful August day. Let me share with you the story of Aldous Lackey. Just the name, Aldous Lackey, kind of invokes an image of an old-time independent Vermonters. I don't know if there's too many children born today named Aldous, perhaps. Aldous Lackey was born in Highgate, Vermont, to a farm family. He later would move to Hyde Park, and as a young man to Morrisville. He loved to hunt, he loved to fish, and he fished and he hunted and he hunted and he fished. His only magazine subscription was to Outdoor Life. His gun of choice was his .30-30. Aldous fathered a daughter out of wedlock when he was 18. The daughter, one of 4 children, born to a mother, each with a different father, all out of wedlock, was soon put into the foster care system and later adopted. She would track Aldous down years later, and they would forge a very loving, powerful relationship. He taught her how to hunt and fish. Aldous worked as a foreman at the Atlas Plywood Company in Morrisville, retiring, earning $40 a week. Aldous was a rock-ribbed Republican. When then Governor Dean Davis proclaimed that Vermonters could get by just fine on $40 a week, Aldous became a Democrat. Aldous was a champion billiards player, cleaned the table with ease, was an incredible horseshoe player. He was very gifted in many ways. Aldous was independent. Cancer would catch up with Aldous later in life, as it did with his daughter, who died from the disease at a relatively young age. The pain was challenging for Aldous. He ultimately would lose half of his jaw. His doctor told him as he began to deteriorate that time, the local nursing home was in the cards for Aldous. Aldous was fiercely independent. He would not go to the senior meals program despite urging from his grandchildren. He didn't want anybody coming to his house with a home delivered meal. He just wasn't very outgoing. The pain would become very difficult to manage. He became delirious because of the medication. And he spoke of thousands of spiders coming out of the walls of his apartment. Aldous Lackey, on an August day, walked by his neighbor who, with his .30-30 rifle, and she said, "Where are you going, Aldous? What are you doing?" He ignored her, but calmly kept on walking to his woodshed. Soon thereafter, single gunshot rang out through the community. Aldous Lackey was 81 years old when he took his life. Mother Teresa has said, to paraphrase her, the very worst kind of poverty of all is not the poverty of hunger, not the poverty of homelessness. The very worst poverty of all is feeling you are alone, feeling that no one cares about you, feeling that you don't matter. The situation my grandfather, Aldous Lackey, experienced was not an isolated one. Diseases of despair, sadly, are common. Poverty, coupled with loneliness and illness, can be a powerful, toxic elixir. They are the 3 legs of the stool of despair. Many Vermonters will struggle. Many older Vermonters struggle with poverty. The pernicious undertow of poverty consumes many whole. 8 out of 10 Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 42% of all seniors retire broke. 401ks have replaced the predictability of traditional pensions, and with them come risk. They require now a financial literacy that many just don't have in this new world of retirement. We know in the last Great Recession of 2008, thousands were forced back out of retirement to work because their savings in many cases had been halved, cut in half. Many struggle with that, and poverty is known to too many. Now, in our little discussion and the time I have left, I'm going to turn to the hard part of this conversation. The answers. Let me be clear. I am not so presumptuous to think I could stand here and tell you all, here are the answers to solve this problem. But I am comfortable enough to tell you I'm opinionated. And I'll share with you what I believe are 5 strategies for changing the order of things, for helping to sustain the kindness. Number 1, raise taxes. Now, before you bolt for the door, before you break out in a rash of discomfort, hear me out. Do not raise taxes on ordinary, hardworking Vermonters. Raise taxes on the some 4,900 tax filers in Vermont who earn, on average, $1.1 million. Who are the recipients of some $109 million in a tax windfall cut from the Trump tax cut. Could we adjust Vermont's highest tax rate? Some, not taking all of the $109 million by any means, though some may say do that. Could we adjust it some, and in so doing help the aging and disabled care networks? I think so. Number 2, if number 1 is not palatable, you really do want to go for the door, consider the creation of a long-term care trust fund, modeled after Social Security. 23 years ago, the Vermont House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly, with 95 votes, to approve a long-term care trust fund for Vermont. It failed in the Vermont Senate by just 3 votes. The idea is not that complicated. Each of us contributes a little based on our earnings so that some of us can get a lot in our time of need. Number 3, Vermont spends approximately $6 billion a year on healthcare, roughly $10,000 for every man, woman, and child in the state. Could we divert just 1% of that $6 billion to go to the aging and disabled care networks? Some $60 million made available. Now, I know what you'll say, and I appreciate it. You'll say, oh, that's great, but it's a little simplistic, Dave. It's just too complicated to do that. Well, sure it is. It's too complicated to do nothing either. Consider this. Chronic care contributes to most of healthcare spending in Vermont. Most of chronic care is spent on the diseases of the elderly. Could we divert some of the healthcare dollars into upstream prevention? Could we address, and the experts say, half of all senior admissions to hospitals come with malnourishment? Do we think such investments might pay for themselves? I do. I think we need to challenge our Green Mountain Care Board to address this issue, to take it on. The social determinants of health must be front and center in this effort to sustain the kindness and not just banter amongst intellectual policy wonks. Number 4, our Vermont workforce is in crisis. There is a shortage of workers, and it will continue to increase in the face of exploding demographics. We need to have buses at the border to help those seeking refuge to our country and greet them with humanity and kindness and help them adapt to our culture, perhaps our weather. We need to create welcoming communities. We need to say to Washington that when the pendulum of justice swings back into the direction of kindness, we will be there to help refugees in numbers far greater than any of us ever imagined. Yes, because it's a humane thing to do, and yes, because it's our very lifeline. The caregiver of tomorrow will look different than the caregiver of today. And the sooner we accept that, the better off we will all be. Number 5, in a back to the future revisionist movement of sorts, we need to look at what happened in the early 1970s. Vermont was a national leader on environmental issues. We said to our towns, we want you to plan to save our heritage. We want you to protect our valley vistas, our mountains, and the beautiful Vermont landscape that we know. And we want you to focus on that. In the same way, we created such an energy back in the 70s to preserve our environment. We need to say to town planning commissions, to conservation commissions, to economic development commissions, help us come together with creative ideas to help individuals live in settings they prefer with dignity. We need to dust off the long mothballed Vermont Independence Fund, which was the creator of many incredible ideas to help the aging and the disabled. We need to take it out of the cedar closet of policy ideas and help that fund re-energize the next generation of creative ideas. Who will lead this effort? To me, indifference ignored is like an untreated infection. Who will treat the infection? Who will provide the antibiotics? Where will the leadership come for the ideas and the actions that are needed? In the same way, our roads and bridges are upgraded, sometimes not as often as we might hope. In the same way, our infrastructure, our institutions, our hospitals and our nursing homes and our physician networks and the technological infrastructure that supports them are upgraded. Doesn't our aging and disabled care systems deserve the same? We must not be defined by indifference. These systems must not atrophy on our watch. Here we sit, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, not as political partisans, not as foot soldiers in some undefined movement, but we are united by the fact we all care deeply. We all care deeply about our neighbors in need. It's been said that we all have the power. We all have the power to do nothing. to sit back, to disengage, to let someone else step forward and deal with the problems that come about. Some use that power with reckless abandon. Join me, join others, come together to say that we need to sustain the kindness. Help us reach out to our leaders and say, will you help us sustain the kindness? Thank you.